The morning sun revealed what darkness had hidden: charred wagon bones and silence where commerce once thrived. Cole Drifter dismounted, his boots crunching through ash that had been the garrison way station. His horse needed water. He needed distance from whatever had happened here. Then he heard it, a sound smaller than wind through ruins. Breathing, behind the skeletal remains of a freight wagon. Two girls huddled together like prairie flowers surviving a wildfire. 4 years old, perhaps. Identical faces streaked with soot, calico dresses torn to rags. They clutched each other with the desperate strength of those who have lost everything else. Cole stood frozen. In 30 years of drifting, he'd mastered the art of riding past other folks' troubles, but these children didn't cry. They simply stared with eyes that had seen too much, their small fingers interlaced as if letting go meant disappearing entirely. His hand moved to his canteen. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The line shack stood forgotten against the canyon wall, its door hanging loose but walls intact. Cole carried both girls inside, their weight nothing compared to the responsibility settling on his shoulders. He laid them on the narrow bunk and studied their faces in the lamplight. Beneath the soot, they were beautiful children, heart-shaped faces, dark hair that might shine again with washing. Morning brought routine he hadn't kept in years. He heated water in his coffee pot, testing the temperature against his wrist like a memory from another life. The girls sat silent on the bunk, watching him tear strips from his spare shirt. "Need to mend these," he said, though talking felt strange. His voice came out rusty. "Can't have you catching cold." The one with the locket, Rosie, he'd decided to call her, made a gesture with her hands, fingers to mouth, then outward. Cole stared, understanding dawning slow as sunrise. The other girl, Ruby by his choosing, repeated it. "Eat," Cole guessed. "You want food." They nodded eagerly. Ruby held up fingers, counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she made sleeping motions against pressed palms. 5 sleeps. 5 days since they'd eaten proper, while salt pork sizzled in his skillet. Rosie showed him more signs, hands moving like water drink, arms cradling air baby, or maybe doll. Then something that made his chest-tight fingers walking, then falling down. "Your mama," Cole said quietly. "She's out there somewhere." The girls exchanged glances. Rosie touched her ears, shook her head. Cole understood. Their mother couldn't hear. That's why they knew these signs, why their small hands spoke louder than their voices. That evening, he found himself humming while setting rabbit snares, an old tune from cavalry days. The sound surprised him. When had music last escaped his throat, Ruby crept close, drawn by the melody, and suddenly her small hand slipped into his weathered one. Cole stopped breathing. The child's fingers were tiny, trusting. She squeezed gently, then pointed at the stars beginning to show. "Pretty," she whispered, the word careful and new. "Yes," Cole managed. "Pretty." Later, when Ruby woke crying from nightmares, Cole awkwardly gathered her against his shoulder. He patted her back, remembering distant motions, feeling the terrified bird flutter of her heart slowly calm. Tomorrow he'd planned to ride on. Now, studying these children who signed their needs and spoke in whispers, he knew he'd be staying another day, maybe longer. The sun hung low and red when Cole first spotted the figure on the horizon. A person walking, limping along the trace that passed for a road in these parts. His hand moved instinctively to his rifle, then stopped. Something about the determination in that gait, the way the figure pressed forward despite obvious pain, made him wait. The girls were playing with brass buttons he'd pulled from his saddlebag, making them into tiny people that danced across the plank table. Ruby looked up first, drawn by some instinct toward the door. She went rigid. Then Rosie's head snapped up, and both girls were moving, scrambling over each other to reach the doorway. "Mama, Mama!" The words exploded from them, the loudest sound he'd heard them make. They flew past him, bare feet raising dust clouds, their mended dresses flapping like wings. Cole followed, keeping his hand away from his weapon but ready for anything. The woman stopped walking, swayed, then dropped to her knees as her daughters crashed into her, all three tumbling together in the dust. Cole held back, watching the mother's hands fly over her children, checking faces, arms, bellies, searching for injuries with the thorough desperation of someone who'd imagined the worst for 5 long days. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 25, with dark hair that had once been pinned proper but now hung loose and tangled. Her blue calico dress was torn at the shoulder, revealing a braided skin beneath. Her left boot was split, explaining the limp. Dust had painted her the color of the desert, except where tears now carved clean rivers down her cheeks. When her eyes finally lifted to find Cole, everything changed. Joy shifted to terror in a heartbeat. She pulled the girls behind her, struggling to stand on her damaged ankle, her mouth opening in what would have been a scream if she could make the sound. Her hands moved frantically, signs he didn't understand but recognized as warning, threat, pleading all at once. But Rosie tugged at her mother's skirt, signing rapidly. Ruby grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her toward Cole while babbling. "Good man! Mama! Good man! Food! Safe!" The woman's eyes darted between her daughters and Cole, confusion replacing fear. The girls kept signing, their small hands painting pictures in the air, eating, sleeping, safety. Rosie pulled her mother's hand, placed it over her own heart, then pointed at Cole. The message was clear. He kept us safe. Slowly. The woman's shoulders dropped. She pressed her palms together, touched them to her chin, then extended them toward Cole. Even without knowing the signs, he understood. "Thank you." "Ma'am," Cole said, then remembered she couldn't hear. He touched his hat brim instead, the gesture universal enough. She tried to stand, winced, and would have fallen if Cole hadn't stepped forward. She flinched at his approach but accepted his arm when her ankle buckled. Together, they made their way to the shack, the girls dancing around them like excited puppies. Inside, Cole helped her to the single chair while the girls climbed over her, still patting and checking as if she might disappear. He found his slate and chalk purchased long ago for leaving notes at way stations and wrote carefully, "You're safe here." She read it, looked at her girls, then back at him. Her fingers trembled as she took the chalk. "Anna," she wrote. Then, after hesitation, "Thank you for my babies." Cole heated water, found the Mustang liniment in his kit. When he gestured to her ankle, she nodded, though her body stayed tense. The joint was swollen, purple-green with bruising. He worked carefully, aware of her eyes tracking every movement. The girls helped, bringing torn cloth for bandages, holding their mother's hands when she winced. As he worked, Anna took the slate again. She drew quickly, crude but clear. A stagecoach, men with guns, a strongbox being opened, then stick figures running, and one hiding behind rocks, watching. She pointed to herself, then drew an X through one of the robber figures, a man falling. She'd seen a killing. Cole's jaw tightened. She drew more the same men, searching, tracking, looking for witnesses. She'd been running for 5 days with no food, little water, her ankle getting worse with every mile. He took the chalk, wrote, "How many?" She held up 3 fingers, then drew again. One man with a scar across his face, another tall, thin, the third with a distinctive hat, Mexican style, decorated. These were specific men, not random drifters. They'd want no witnesses to murder. Cole pulled out his pocket watch, checked the time, though it hardly mattered. What mattered was the decision forming in his gut. He wrote, "They tracking you." Anna nodded, then touched her daughters' heads with infinite tenderness. The message was clear. They were all in danger. He could leave come morning, point them toward the nearest town, give them his horse maybe, and ride out on foot. It's what he'd have done a week ago, what any sensible drifter would do. Don't get involved in other folks' troubles, especially the killing kind. But Ruby was leaning against his knee now, casual as if she'd known him all her life. Rosie was showing her mother the button people, signing excitedly about their games. And Anna was watching him with eyes that held fear and hope in equal measure. One hand pressed to her ribs where he now noticed blood had seeped through the fabric. Old, but telling. Cole took the chalk one more time, wrote slowly, "We leave tomorrow. Together. I know safe routes." Anna read it twice. Then her composure finally cracked completely. She covered her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs while her daughters climbed into her lap, patting her cheeks, signing comfort. Cole stepped outside to check the horizon, giving them privacy. The sun was setting properly now, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere out there, 3 men were hunting a woman whose only crime was being in the wrong place. They thought they were hunting a lone woman with 2 small children. Easy prey. His hand settled on his rifle stock, not from fear, but from resolve. They weren't hunting a lone woman anymore. They were hunting his family, or what was starting to feel like family. The thought should have scared him, should have sent him riding. Instead, he found himself planning. Tomorrow they'd need to move fast but careful. He'd teach Anna to read trail signs, set up signals between them. The girls were young but clever, they could help watch. There were routes the hunters wouldn't know, waterholes off the main traces. When he went back inside, Anna had washed her face with the remaining water. She looked up at him, and for the first time, offered a small smile. She wrote on the slate, "My daughters say you make music." Cole pulled out his harmonica, wiped it on his shirt. When he played a slow, sweet melody his mother had loved, Anna placed her hand flat on the table, feeling the vibrations through the wood. Her eyes closed, and something peaceful crossed her face. The girls curled against their mother, safe and whole, and Cole played on, making music for a family that was no longer quite strangers, while darkness gathered around their small shelter and the hunt waited for tomorrow. The first morning of their journey began before dawn. Cole woke to find Anna already up, her silhouette against the doorway where she watched the horizon. When she noticed him stirring, she touched her chest, then pointed outside, signing something he didn't understand. But her meaning was clear enough. She was standing watch. Had been for who knows how long. He wrote on the slate, "You should have woken me." She shook her head, pointed to him, then made a sleeping gesture followed by touching her heart. "Let you rest. You needed it. Or maybe you gave us peace to sleep." With Anna, every gesture carried layers. They broke their simple camp with practiced efficiency, though they'd only been together 2 days. Anna packed what little they had while Cole fashioned a travois from lodge poles he'd spotted near the shack, lashing them together with rawhide strips. The girls would tire quickly on foot, and they needed to make distance. "Smart?" Anna signed, or what he thought meant smart. She touched her temple, then pointed at the travois. Ruby and Rosie climbed aboard immediately, delighted with their new carriage. Cole noticed how Anna had braided their hair tight and practical, how she'd torn strips from her petticoat to reinforce their mended shoes. Every action spoke of a mother's fierce practicality. As they walked, Anna began teaching him. She'd point to something, a rock, the sky, a bird make the sign, then wait for him to copy it. His large, scarred hands felt clumsy trying to match her fluid motions, but she was patient. When he signed bird correctly, she smiled. And that smile was worth any amount of fumbling. The girls served as eager assistants in this education. Ruby would run ahead, find something interesting, and sign back to them about it. A lizard, a pretty stone. Danger that one made Cole's heart skip until he realized she meant a small cactus. Rosie, quieter but observant, would correct his signs with gentle touches, adjusting his fingers just so. By midday, when they stopped in the shade of a massive cottonwood, Cole knew signs for water, food, rest, danger, safe, children, walk, stop, good, bad, yes, no. And though he wasn't sure why Anna had been so insistent on this one beautiful, Anna had discovered his small store of provisions and transformed them into something resembling a meal. She'd found wild onions along the trail, mixed them with the soaked beans and salt pork to create something that smelled like home cooking. She worked with economy, no wasted motions, but also with grace. When she caught him watching, she signed something he didn't recognize, then wrote in the dirt with a stick, "You don't eat enough." He wrote back, "Don't usually have reason to." She studied him for a moment, then served him first, a larger portion than she gave herself. The girls giggled at something, perhaps his expression of surprise. It had been years since anyone had served him a meal with care for his appetite. After eating, as they rested through the heat of the day, a system developed. Anna watched their back trail, her eyes sharp for dust or movement. Cole scouted ahead when they moved, reading the land for ambush spots, water, shelter. The girls became their communication line, running between them with signed messages when they spread too far apart to see clearly. "Mama says tracks," Rosie signed to Cole, her small face serious with the importance of her mission. Cole went back, found where Anna pointed. Horse tracks, but old 2 days at least, heading perpendicular to their path. He signed safe and old, hoping he had it right. Anna nodded, but kept watching. She had the hypervigilance of prey, necessary for survival but exhausting to maintain. Late afternoon brought them to a small stream. While the girls splashed and played, Anna sat beside Cole on a fallen log. She took his slate and wrote, "Why help us?" Cole considered his answer. He could write about Christian duty or cowboy codes, but those would be lies. The truth was simpler and more complex. He wrote, "Tired of being alone." She read it, touched his hand briefly the first time she'd initiated contact beyond necessary support for her ankle. Then she wrote, "Us too." She began to tell him more through a combination of drawing, signs, and written words. Her husband James had died of fever 2 winters ago. She'd been heading to her sister in Colorado, had paid for stage passage with the last of their savings. The girls were all she had. When the robbers came, she'd pushed the girls out the other side of the coach, told them to run and hide. By the time the killing was done and she could escape, she couldn't find them. "5 days I searched," she wrote, tears dropping onto the slate, smudging the chalk. Cole took the slate, wrote, "They're safe now. Because of you." She met his eyes directly then, and he saw not just gratitude but something deeper, trust beginning to grow. She signed something complex, then simplified it for him. "Good man." As the sun lowered, they found a defensible spot for the night camp, a cluster of rocks with clear sight lines but also concealment. The girls helped gather wood for a small fire, carefully built to minimize smoke. Anna produced a sewing kit from her bundle and began repairing Cole's shirt, the one he'd torn up for bandages. Her stitches were tiny, perfect, almost invisible. After their simple supper, Cole pulled out his harmonica. He'd been hesitant, knowing she couldn't hear it, but Ruby had begged with signs and those big eyes. As he played a gentle waltz his mother had loved, Anna placed her hand on his knee, not intimate, just practical, feeling the rhythm through the vibration. Her other hand moved slightly, as if dancing to music only she could feel. The girls tried to dance, their movements clumsy but enthusiastic. Anna watched them with such naked love that Cole had to look away. This was what he'd lost, what he'd run from, this crushing vulnerability of caring for something you could lose. But here he was again, despite every promise he'd made to himself about staying disconnected. When the girls tired, they created their sleeping arrangement without discussion. The girls between the adults, the one blanket they had covering the children fully while Cole and Anna made do with their coats. But sometime in the night, Cole woke to find Ruby had rolled against his side, her small hand clutching his shirt. On the other side, he could see Anna's hand resting protectively on Rosie's shoulder. They looked, in the moonlight, like a family. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. The second day brought better progress. Anna's ankle was improving, and she insisted on walking more. Using a walking stick Cole had cut for her, her pride wouldn't let her be carried or pulled, though he could see the pain in the tight lines around her mouth. They developed more signs between them, some official ones Anna knew. Others they created for their specific needs. A hand flat and pushing down meant everyone down, danger. A finger circled in the air meant all clear, continue. 2 fingers walking meant we walk. But 3 fingers meant hurry. The girls began calling him Mr. Cole, which seemed to amuse Anna. She wrote on the slate during their noon rest, "They like you. They don't like many people." "Smart girls," he wrote back, making her laugh a silent laugh, but real, her shoulders shaking and eyes bright. That afternoon, they encountered another traveler, a preacher heading east on a tired mule. Cole's hand went to his gun, but Anna touched his arm, signed, "Wait." She was right. The man was harmless, offered them blessings and news from the western towns. No mention of anyone hunting a woman and children. Maybe they'd lost the trail. But that night, Anna stayed awake again, watching. When Cole tried to take the watch from her, she signed something he interpreted as, "My turn, my job." He wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. This was how she contributed, how she maintained her dignity despite accepting his help. He understood pride, understood the need to not be just rescued, but to be a partner in your own salvation. On the 3rd day, the land began to change, growing rougher but also more beautiful. Red rocks rose like ancient monuments, and hidden springs appeared in unexpected places. Anna knew some of them, had traveled this route before with her husband. She led them to a pool hidden behind a fall of rocks, so unexpected and perfect that even Cole, who trusted little in this world, had to marvel. While the girls played in the shallows, Anna sat beside him on a sun-warmed rock. She wrote, "James would have liked you. How do you know?" She touched her heart, then her head, then pointed to him. "Heart knows. Mind knows." Something like that. Or maybe you have a good heart, a good mind. With Anna, he was learning. Everything had layers of meaning, depths that spoken words might have made shallow. As the sun set on their 3rd day together, painting the rocks in shades of gold and scarlet, Cole realized something had shifted. They were no longer strangers helping each other survive. They were something else, not quite family, but no longer separate either. The girls signed to him as naturally as they did to their mother. Anna trusted him to scout ahead, to make decisions about their route, and he found himself checking on them constantly, listening for their breathing at night, watching Anna's ankle for signs of swelling, carrying the girls when they tired without being asked. That night, after the girls were asleep, Anna drew a map in the dirt, showing him where her sister lived. Still 4 days' travel, maybe 5 with the children. She looked at him questioningly, clearly asking, "Will you take us all that way?" Cole smoothed out the dirt and drew a new map, one that showed a longer but safer route, one that avoided the main trails where the hunters might be watching. At the end, he drew a small cabin. Anna pointed at it, questioning. He wrote on the slate, "Place I know. Safe. Can rest there. Then decide." She studied his face for a long moment in the firelight. Then she signed something he'd learned that first day but hadn't understood the importance of until now, trust, as if to seal this moment. From far off came the sound of coyotes singing to the moon. Anna couldn't hear them, but she saw him listening, tilted her head in question. He tried to explain through signs, dog, but wild, singing at the moon. She looked puzzled until he howled softly, showing her. Her silent laugh was beautiful, and when the girls stirred at the sound, she signed to them that everything was safe, just Cole being silly. But later, as he kept watch while they slept, he thought about that howl, a lone creature calling out in the darkness, hoping for an answer. He'd been that coyote for so long. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of a pack. Now, looking at these 3 who had somehow become his to protect, he thought maybe he was remembering. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The men hunting Anna were still out there, The journey was far from over, but tonight, with the stars bright overhead and three people sleeping trustingly near him, Cole allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he'd found something worth the risk of caring again. The deer path appeared like a whisper through the rocks, barely visible unless you knew how to read the land. Cole almost missed it, but Anna tugged his sleeve, pointing to tracks in the dust. Deer, elk, maybe wild sheep. Where animals gathered in this dry country, water followed. She signed something he'd learned meant maybe good, her face hopeful but cautious. They'd been climbing since dawn, the main trail abandoned for these harder but safer routes through the canyon country. The girls rode the travois without complaint, though Cole could see them growing listless in the heat. Anna's limp had returned, though she tried to hide it, and his own shoulder, the left one that had taken a bullet years back, ached with each step. The path wound between towering red rocks, narrow enough that Cole had to lead the horse carefully. Then the smell hit him, sulfur, but not unpleasant, mixed with something mineral and clean. Steam rose from behind a natural wall of stone, and the temperature changed, became humid and warm instead of dry heat. "Hot springs," he said aloud, forgetting Anna couldn't hear, but she was already moving past him, drawn by the steam, her face transformed with recognition and something like joy. The springs lay hidden in a natural bowl of rock. 3 pools of varying sizes fed by water seeping from the canyon wall. Mineral deposits had painted the rocks in shades of white and yellow and rust. Steam rose gently from the largest pool, while the smallest looked cooler, fed by a separate trickle of regular spring water. Ancient fire pits marked where others had camped, natives, most likely, who had known this secret for generations. Anna turned to him, signed rapidly. He caught safe and good, and something about healing. She wrote in her small notebook she'd started carrying it to save the slate for longer conversations. Sacred place. James knew it. Indians showed him. Water helps pain. The girls had already scrambled down from the travois, circling the pools like excited puppies. Ruby tested the water with her finger, squealed silently, and signed to her sister. Too hot in the big one, just right in the middle pool. Cole made camp quickly, stringing up canvas between 2 boulders for privacy. There was dry wood from past visitors, a fire ring already built, while he worked. Anna unpacked their few belongings with unusual care. She produced a small cake of real soap, not the harsh lye stuff, but something that smelled of roses that she must have been saving. She approached him with the soap and her notebook. "You first, then stand guard. Then us. Then you again if you want." He started to protest. Ladies should go first, but she shook her head firmly, pointed to his shoulder. She'd noticed him favoring it, of course. She noticed everything. The hot water was paradise and torture combined. Cole hadn't properly bathed in weeks, had forgotten what it felt like to be truly clean. The mineral water stung cuts he didn't know he had, but also seemed to draw out deeper aches. His shoulder, cramped and twisted for so long, slowly loosened. He stayed until his skin pruned, then dressed in his cleaner shirt and took up position where he could watch the trail but not see the pools. The sounds of splashing and the girls' delighted giggles told him they were enjoying the water. He found himself smiling, whittling a piece of wood into something that might become a doll. It had been years since he'd whittled for pleasure rather than necessity. An hour passed, maybe more. Then Ruby appeared, hair wet and braided, wearing a clean dress he hadn't known they possessed. She took his hand, tugging him back toward the pools. Anna was dressed but still sitting by the water's edge. Her hair, Lord. Her hair was beautiful when clean, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. She'd set up near the smallest pool with various plants and cloth strips laid out like a doctor preparing for surgery. She pointed to his shirt, then his shoulder, her meaning clear. When he hesitated, she wrote, "I know healing. My mother taught. Please." Cole removed his shirt, self-conscious of the scars mapping his body, the bullet wound. Yes, but also rope burns, knife marks, the geography of a violent life. Anna's expression didn't change, but her fingers ghosted over each mark, cataloging damage. When she reached the swollen mass of his shoulder, she pressed gently. finding the exact spot where muscle had healed wrong around the bullet's path. She signed to the girls, who ran off and returned with smooth stones from the pool's edge. Anna heated these in the hot water, wrapped them in cloth, and placed them against his shoulder. The heat penetrated deep, almost painful, but also relief beyond words. While the heat worked, she prepared a poultice wild sage, willow bark, something else with a sharp, clean smell. Her fingers worked the mixture with practiced skill. When she began massaging the shoulder, Cole had to close his eyes. Her hands were strong, stronger than he'd expected, finding knots of scar tissue and working them patiently. It hurt, God. It hurt, but like lancing a wound, necessary pain that promised healing. The girl sat nearby, Rosie humming tunelessly while Ruby sorted pretty stones by color. Anna tapped his arm, showed him a small pot of salve beeswax mixed with herbs. She raised her eyebrows, asking permission. When he nodded, she worked it into the shoulder, the warmth spreading through muscles that had been cold for years. Her touch was clinical but gentle, professional but somehow intimate. She wrapped his shoulder with strips of clean cloth, binding it properly for the first time since the injury. Then she sat back, studied her work, and smiled, not the small, careful smiles he'd seen before, but something genuine and proud. She wrote, "Tomorrow better, week, much better, always some pain, but less." "How do you know this?" he wrote back. "My mother was healing woman, taught me before." She paused, then drew a simple symbol he recognized as death. Her mother gone. That knowledge passed down now, put to use on his battered body. The afternoon had grown late, sun slanting golden through the steam. The girls were back in the middle pool, playing some elaborate game with their stones. Anna looked at them, then at the water, clearly wanting to join them but held back by propriety. "Go," Cole said aloud, then wrote it down. "I'll watch the trail." She shook her head, pointed to him. The water made a swimming motion. He should enjoy it while they could, but he was stubborn too. Pointed to her, insisted. Finally, she wrote, "Together all safe here. We can watch." It was improper. He knew. A man and a woman who weren't married, bathing in the same place even with children present. But propriety belonged to a different world, one with proper towns and society's rules. Out here, there was only survival and these moments of grace when you found them. Cole chose the largest pool, far enough from where Anna and the girls entered the medium pool to preserve modesty. The hot water embraced him again, and his shoulders sang relief under its bandages. He could feel through the rocks the vibrations of the girls playing. When he glanced over, Anna was floating on her back, eyes closed, hair spreading like dark silk in the water. She must have felt his gaze because her eyes opened, met his across the distance. She didn't look away, didn't show embarrassment. Instead, she signed something he didn't recognize, then spelled it out slowly, P-E-A-C-E. The girls discovered they could swim between pools where the water overflowed, creating a small channel. They made it a game, carrying their stone treasures back and forth. Ruby brought Cole a particularly pretty piece of quartz, pink-tinged and smooth. When he admired it properly, she beamed and dove back for more. As the sun lowered, painting the canyon walls gold and red, they reluctantly left the water. Anna had thought ahead, had clothes drying on sun-warmed rocks. While Cole rebuilt their fire, she prepared something special from their supplies biscuits with the last of their honey, wild mint tea, even a handful of dried berries she'd been saving. They ate in comfortable silence, the girls drowsy and content, leaning against their mother. Anna had left her hair down to dry, and the evening light caught colors in it, not just brown but hints of gold, red, like good wood polished to shine. She caught him looking and didn't seem to mind, though she signed something to the girls that made them giggle. After supper, while Anna helped the girls make jewelry from their collected stones and bits of string, Cole tested his shoulder. The movement was easier. The constant ache reduced to an occasional twinge. He'd grown so used to the pain he'd forgotten what its absence felt like. Anna noticed, smiled. and wrote, "Better. Much. Thank you." She wrote more. "You gave us safety. This is small payment." "Not small," he wrote back. "Not payment. Gift." She studied the word, then him, then wrote, "Friends give gifts." Friends. He agreed, though the word felt too small for what they were becoming. That night, they made camp near the springs, close enough to hear the water's gentle bubble. The girls fell asleep immediately, exhausted from play and sun and water. Cole sat by the fire, working on the wooden doll while Anna mended clothes by feel more than sight in the firelight. She touched his arm, pointed to the doll, signed question. He handed it over, watched her examine it with careful fingers, finding the features he'd carved: simple face, suggestion of hair, joints that might move once he figured out the mechanics. She smiled, handed it back, then signed something complex that ended with touching her heart. "For them?" he asked, pointing to the girls. She nodded, then added more signs, finally writing, "They will treasure. From you means special." The fire crackled between them. Comfortable warmth after water's heat. His shoulder felt loose, free, like something had been untangled that he hadn't known was knotted. Anna was still working her needle through fabric, but her movements were slower, peaceful rather than purposeful. She set down her sewing, wrote, "This place, sacred, healing place, body and..." She touched her heart, then her head. Cole understood. The springs had washed away more than trail dust. Something had loosened in all of them. Some wall worn down by water and warmth and simple human kindness. The girls had played like children instead of scared survivors. Anna had relaxed her constant vigilance for a few hours. And he'd remembered what it felt like to be cared for, to have gentle hands tend wounds with intention to heal rather than harm. Tomorrow they would return to the trail, to watching for pursuit, to the careful dance of survival. But tonight, they had this full bellies, clean bodies, the peculiar peace that comes from finding unexpected sanctuary. Anna stood, signed goodnight, then surprised him by taking his hand briefly. She turned it palm up, traced letters with her finger, THANKYOU, not just signed but spelled into his skin, making sure he understood. Then she was gone to where the girls slept, settling beside them like a bird returning to nest. Cole sat alone by the dying fire, shoulder warm and loose under its bandages, watching stars appear in the narrow strip of sky between canyon walls. The springs bubbled their ancient rhythm, and for the first time in years, maybe since that bullet took him down, maybe since before he felt something he'd thought lost forever. Not happiness, exactly, nor peace, but possibility. The chance that a body could heal, that strangers could become friends, maybe more, that a man who'd chosen loneliness might choose differently, given reason enough. In the morning, they would leave this sacred place, but they would carry its gifts with them: clean bodies, eased pain, and the memory of an afternoon when they'd all been simply human together, sharing water and warmth while the world and its dangers waited patiently outside their temporary paradise. The sky changed without warning. One moment they walked under blazing sun. The next, clouds rolled in from the north like smoke from a prairie fire. Cole had seen storms build fast in this country, but this one moved with unusual violence, the air going thick and electric, his horse's ears flattened, and the animal danced sideways, sensing what was coming. Anna felt it too, the pressure change, the sudden coolness. She grabbed his arm, pointed to the sky, then signed rapidly. Danger. Big. Soon. Her eyes were wide with the kind of fear reserved for nature's fury, more immediate than any human threat. The first fat raindrops hit as Cole scanned the canyon walls. Lightning flickered in the approaching wall of black clouds. They had minutes, maybe less. The girls were already whimpering, Ruby clutching her collected stones, Rosie holding the half-finished doll he'd been carving. There a shadow in the limestone cliff face. Cole grabbed the horse's reins, pulling the terrified animal toward what he hoped was shelter. It was a cave, but barely. The opening stood just tall enough for him to enter bent over. The interior scarcely large enough for 4 people to fit if they pressed close. But it was dry and went back far enough to escape the wind. They tumbled inside just as the sky opened. Rain came not in drops but sheets, turning the world beyond the cave mouth into a gray wall of water. Thunder crashed so loud the girls screamed. Cole felt their terror through the rock itself. Lightning followed immediately, brilliant white, showing him Anna's face pale with fear as she pulled her daughters close. The cave was shallow but dry, carved by centuries of wind and water into smooth curves. Cole tied the horse under a slight overhang outside, not ideal, but better than nothing. He grabbed their few supplies from the travois before the rain soaked everything through. His oilcloth, the blankets wrapped in it, the food pouch, Anna's precious bundle with their spare clothes. Inside, they had to arrange themselves like puzzle pieces. The cave curved, giving them a natural corner where they could huddle. Cole spread the oilcloth on the sandy floor, but it barely covered enough space for them to sit. The girls pressed against their mother, shaking from cold or fear. He couldn't tell. Anna was already working. Practical even in crisis. She pulled out the one wool blanket they had, mostly dry thanks to the oilcloth. But 1 blanket for 4 people, with the temperature dropping fast as rain cooled the desert air. She looked at Cole, and he saw the calculation in her eyes, propriety versus survival. He made the decision for her, sitting against the cave wall and opening his arms. "Come," he said aloud, though she couldn't hear. But she understood the gesture. She brought the girls, settling them between Cole and herself, then pulled the blanket over all of them. It barely reached, requiring them to press close. Lightning flashed again, illuminating their shelter in stark detail, the low ceiling, the walls that pressed close, their faces painted in silver light. Thunder followed, and Cole felt both girls burrow deeper into the warmth between adults. Their fear was physical, trembling that wouldn't stop. Anna signed to them, her hands visible in the next lightning flash. Cole didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear comfort. Safety. Stories, maybe. She kept signing, and gradually Rosie signed back. Then Ruby, a conversation he couldn't follow, but understood distraction from the storm's fury. Cole found the lucifer matches in their tin, still dry. He'd grabbed a few pieces of wood from their last camp, knowing dry fuel might be scarce. The fire would be small, the cave couldn't handle smoke from anything larger, but it would give light and a little warmth. He built it carefully in a depression near the cave mouth where smoke could escape. The tiny fire changed everything. The girls' faces became visible, tear-tracked but calming. Anna's hands cast shadows on the wall as she continued signing stories. Cole pulled out their food-jerked venison, hard biscuits, the last of the berries from the hot springs. They ate pressed together, passing the horn cup of water between them. Thunder crashed again, seeming to shake the mountain itself. Ruby crawled into Cole's lap without hesitation, her small body shaking. He wrapped his arms around her, felt her heart racing against his chest. Rosie pressed against her mother but reached out one hand to grasp Cole's sleeve, needing that connection. Anna met his eyes over the children's heads. In the firelight, he could see her own fear, not of the storm, but of something else. She pulled out her notebook, wrote with difficulty in the cramped space. James died in storm, fever, then storm came. Girls remember. Understanding flooded through him. This wasn't just fear of weather, but memory of loss. Trauma refreshed by nature's violence. He shifted, creating more space under his arm, inviting without demanding. Anna hesitated, then moved closer, bringing Rosie with her. They formed a tight unit, the girls surrounded by adult warmth, the blanket holding in their heat. The storm raged on. Water began seeping in along one wall, not flooding but enough to make Anna pull their feet up. everyone pressing tighter. Cole could feel her shoulder against his, the girl's weight across both their laps. When lightning flashed, he saw Anna had closed her eyes, her lips moving in what might have been prayer. He pulled out his harmonica, not to play, but to show the girls. In the firelight, the metal-caught gleams distracted them from the storm. Ruby took it, pretended to play, then passed it to Rosie. Back and forth they went, making their own silent music while real thunder provided percussion. As the storm's first fury passed into steady rain, Anna began to draw in her notebook. Simple pictures at first their journey, the hot springs, the girls playing, then more. A house with a garden, a man in bed, obviously ill, the same man in a box, a woman and two small girls standing in rain, the stagecoach, the robbery. Cole understood. She was telling her whole story, not just the recent terror, but everything that led them here. When she finished, she handed him the pencil. He'd never been good with words, worse with pictures. But he drew what he could: a small cabin, a woman with a round belly, then the woman lying still, a man walking away from a grave, years of empty trail, suggested by winding lines, then the burned wagons, two small figures, and finally this cave with 4 people inside. Anna studied his drawings, touched the image of the pregnant woman gently. She wrote, "How long?" He held up 5 fingers. 5 years since Mary died trying to bring their son into the world. 5 years of drifting, avoiding anything that might make him feel that loss again. She wrote, "The baby." Cole shook his head. Both gone, taking with them any future he'd imagined. Anna's eyes filled with tears, not pity, but understanding. She'd lost her planned future too, was building something new from fragments. The girls had fallen asleep. Ruby still clutching the harmonica, Rosie holding the wooden doll. They breathed in unison, the way children do when they feel safe. Cole could feel their warmth through his shirt, little furnaces generating heat under the blanket. Anna wrote again, afraid. He knew she meant not of the storm, but of this, the 4 of them pressed together like family, like what they were becoming. He nodded. Yes, terrified. She wrote, "Me too." But she didn't move away. If anything, she settled more firmly against his shoulder. They sat watching the fire die to embers while rain continued its steady drum beyond the cave mouth. Sometimes lightning still flashed, showing him her profile, strong jaw, straight nose, eyes that had seen too much but still held hope. Sometime in the night, the storm passed. Cole woke when had he fallen asleep to find stars visible through the cave opening. The girls had shifted, now lying across both adults' laps like puppies. Anna's head had dropped to his shoulder, her breathing deep and even. His arm had gone numb where she leaned on it, but he didn't move. This was what he'd run from, this terrible vulnerability of caring. These 3 had slipped past his defenses as surely as the storm had driven them to shelter. He could leave them at Anna's sister's place, ride on, return to the safety of solitude. But looking at Ruby's small hand still clutching his shirt, at Rosie's peaceful face, at Anna's trust in sleeping against him, he knew he wouldn't. Maybe couldn't. Dawn came with extraordinary beauty. The rain had washed the world clean, and as the sun rose, it painted a rainbow across the canyon, brilliant, perfect, seeming to spring from the very rocks around them. Cole gently woke Anna, pointed to the light show. She woke the girls, and they all crowded at the cave mouth, watching the rainbow shimmer. Anna signed something to the girls, then wrote for Cole, "Rainbow promise. After storms, beauty. After sorrow, joy." The girls signed excitedly, pointing to the rainbow, then to themselves, to their mother, to Cole. He didn't need translation. They were saying the rainbow was for them, a sign, a promise. Ruby tugged his hand, signing something he'd learned meant good and family, and something else maybe forever, maybe together. As they packed their few belongings, now damp but drying in the morning sun, Cole noticed something had changed. They moved around each other with new ease, the forced intimacy of the night having broken down walls that might have stood for weeks otherwise. The girls helped without being asked. Anna touched his arm to get his attention without hesitation, and he found himself automatically checking that everyone was ready before they moved on. They emerged from the cave into a world transformed. The desert bloomed flowers he hadn't known were there, open to the sun. Their seeds, patient through drought, now seizing their moment. The air smelled of sage and wet earth, clean and full of promise. Even his horse seemed refreshed, shaking his mane and stepping livelier. As they prepared to continue their journey, Anna wrote one more thing. "Thank you for the shelter." She meant the cave, he knew, but also more. Shelter from the storm, from loneliness, from the long dark night of grief. He'd given them that, and they'd given it back to him in equal measure. The rainbow faded as they walked on, but its promise remained. They were no longer four separate people sharing a trail by necessity. They were something new, forged by storm and closeness and the simple human need to hold together against the dark. Where that would lead, Cole didn't know, but for the first time in 5 years, he wanted to find out. The trail ahead wound through country washed new by rain, and they walked it together, still cautious, still watching for danger, but also somehow lighter. The girls ran ahead, splashing in puddles, their laughter silent but visible in their jumping joy. Anna walked beside him, her limp nearly gone, her presence steady and sure. The crossroads appeared at midday like a question mark carved into the desert. 2 trails diverging, one heading northwest toward the settlements Cole knew, places where a man could disappear and a family could start fresh. The other, barely visible, winding east toward Colorado and Anna's sister. They stood at the split, and Cole felt the weight of decision pressing down like the noon sun. Anna studied both paths, then wrote in her notebook, "How far to Margaret's?" 3 days, maybe 4. Cole wrote back, "Through open country, main roads." She understood what he wasn't saying. Main roads meant exposure, meant anyone hunting them would watch those routes. She looked at the Northwest Trail, questioning. "Longer," he wrote, "but safer. Mountain settlements. People who don't ask questions." Before she could respond, Ruby tugged at her mother's skirt, her face flushed despite the day's moderate temperature. Anna pressed a hand to her daughter's forehead, and her expression shifted to concern. She checked Rosie next to the same warmth, though Rosie stood steadier. They needed to stop, needed shelter and rest. But first, Cole wanted to scout ahead, understand their options. He signed to Anna that he'd ride out, check both trails, be back within the hour. She nodded but caught his sleeve, signed "careful" twice, making sure he understood. The eastern trail showed nothing unusual for a quarter mile, but on the northwest path, Cole found something that made his blood run cold. A horse, dead maybe 2 days, shot through the head. It bore a brand he recognized from Anna's drawings, the gang's mark. A twisted S with a bar through it. This was one of their animals, ridden hard until it foundered, then killed rather than abandoned. He examined the ground carefully. 3 riders had been here, but one had continued on foot after the horse died. They'd been moving fast, pushing hard, but toward where not following Cole's group's actual trail, they'd lost that back at the springs. But they were searching, systematically working through the possible routes. Cole returned to find Anna had already made a temporary camp in the shade of a massive cottonwood. The girls lay on the blanket, Ruby restless with fever, Rosie quieter but clearly unwell. Anna was mixing something in their horn cup willow bark tea, he recognized, for fever. He drew the dead horse in the dirt, the brand clear. Anna's face went white. She wrote quickly, "How close?" 2 days ago, but they don't have our trail." She looked at the girls, back at him, and he saw her wrestling with the same decision he faced. Safety versus family obligation. The unknown versus the planned. She wrote, "Margaret expects us. Has room. Help." Cole nodded but drew something else, the main road. Stick figures representing the gang, watching. Then the mountain route, winding, but empty. He added small buildings. suggested settlements where they could rest. Find medicine? Your choice, he wrote, though it cost him to leave it to her. Every instinct screamed to take the safe route, but these weren't his children. And her sister represented something he couldn't offer blood family. Certain welcome. A planned future. Anna tended the girls through the afternoon while Cole kept watch. Ruby's fever climbed despite the willow bark, and she cried silently in her mother's arms, tears without sound that somehow seemed worse than wails. Rosie tried to help, bringing water, fanning her sister with Cole's hat, but her own weakness showed in trembling hands. As the sun lowered, Cole made a decision. He pulled out the small bottle of laudanum from his kit saved for emergencies, for bullet wounds and broken bones. A few drops in water would ease the girls' discomfort, help them sleep. Anna watched him measure it carefully, understanding the precious nature of this medicine. The girls settled as darkness fell, their breathing easier but still too warm. Cole built up the fire and prepared a mustard plaster the way he remembered his mother doing, spreading the mixture on cloth to draw out fever. Anna worked beside him, trusting his frontier medicine, though she'd probably never seen such remedies. With the girls sleeping, Cole and Anna sat the night watch together. She pulled out her sewing, working by feel more than sight, mending a tear in Ruby's dress. He cleaned his rifle, checked the percussion caps were dry after the storm, small tasks that kept hands busy while minds churned. Anna set down her sewing, touched his arm. In the firelight, she opened the locket that had hung around Rosie's neck since he'd found them. Inside was a photograph, a young man with kind eyes and a serious mouth. James, her husband. She studied it for a long moment, then closed it gently. She pointed to the photograph, then to the ground past, buried, gone. Then she pointed to Cole, to herself, to the sleeping girls. Present, here, now. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw a question that needed no words. Cole wanted to look away but couldn't. She was offering something, not replacing what was lost, but building something new from the pieces that remained. He thought of Mary, of the dreams that died with her, of 5 years spent running from the possibility of that pain again. Anna wrote slowly, "Girls need father. I need partner. You need..." She left it unfinished, waiting. "Family," he wrote, the words scraping out of some deep place he'd sealed off. "But I'm scared." She smiled then, sad and understanding. She wrote, "James was safe choice. Good man. Farmer. Steady." She paused, then added, "You're different, but girls trust you." "I trust you." She reached out, touched his face, a gesture so unexpected he froze. Her fingers found wetness on his cheek, a tear he hadn't known had fallen. She traced its path gently, then wrote, "Crying means feeling. Feeling means alive." They sat in silence then, but it was full silence, pregnant with possibility. Cole pulled out the wooden doll he'd been carving, now nearly finished. He'd given it movable arms, a sweet face, hair etched in careful lines. Anna took it, examined it by firelight, then held it against her heart. She wrote, "You make beautiful things from rough wood." The metaphor wasn't lost on him. They were all rough wood, scarred by loss and weathered by trouble. But maybe something beautiful could still be carved from what remained. Near midnight, Ruby's fever spiked. She thrashed in her sleep, calling out wordlessly. Anna held her, but fear painted her features. They needed more than willow bark and mustard plasters. They needed a real doctor, medicine, safety to recover. Cole made the decision then, the one his heart had already made while his mind debated. He wrote, "Northwest Trail, settlement called Haven, 2 days on. Doctor there, safe people." Anna studied his face. "Your sister." Cole started to write, but she covered his hand, stopping him. She wrote instead, Margaret has waited 2 years. She can wait longer. These, she pointed to the girls, to him, to herself. Can't wait. They broke camp before dawn, Cole carrying Ruby while Anna led the horse with Rosie on its back. The northwest trail was rough but shaded, winding through country that would hide them from watching eyes. As the sun rose, Cole saw Anna looking back just once toward the eastern trail, toward her sister and certainty. Then she faced forward, decision made. Through the day they pushed on, stopping only to dose the girls with careful drops of laudanum to force water and broth into them. Ruby's fever had broken but left her weak as a newborn kitten. Rosie seemed better but stayed quiet, watching everything with 2 serious eyes. That evening, they made camp early near a small spring, while Anna tended the girls. Cole hunted, returning with 2 rabbits that would make strengthening broth. As he cleaned them, Anna appeared beside him, helped without being asked. Their hands worked in rhythm, no words needed. After the girls were settled for the night fever down, breathing easier, Anna pulled out her notebook one more time. She wrote, "No promises. Too much can happen. But if we reach safety, if girls recover, if gang gives up, then..." Cole took the pencil, wrote, "Then we decide together. All of us." "Ma?" She nodded, satisfied with this non-promise that was somehow more binding than vows. They'd chosen the hard path, the uncertain one, but they'd chosen it together. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. Tonight, they had made their most important decision to face whatever came as a unit, as something more than 4 people sharing a trail. As the fire died to coals and Anna curled beside her daughters, Cole kept watch. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggles, but he found comfort in their steadiness. Somewhere to the east, Anna's sister waited. Somewhere behind, dangerous men searched. But here, now, in this small circle of firelight, a different future was taking shape. He pulled out the wooden doll, added the final touches by feel in the darkness. Tomorrow he'd give it to the girls, watch them smile. Tomorrow they'd continue toward Haven and the hope of healing. Tomorrow they'd be one day closer to whatever they were becoming. But tonight, he simply carved and kept watch, guarding not just 3 travelers, but the fragile possibility of family reborn from ashes. Love discovered not in passion, but in quiet choice, and home found not in a place, but in the decision to stop running and start building, together. The Willow River ran high from the recent rains, brown with silt and moving fast enough to make crossing dangerous. The ferry landing sat on the eastern bank, just a flat-bottomed raft on ropes, big enough for a wagon and team, operated by an old man who lived in a shack beside the crossing, but it was the only way across for 20 miles in either direction. Cole studied the situation from a bluff overlooking the river. The girls were better, but still weak, riding the horse together while Anna walked beside them. They needed to cross, needed to reach Haven and its doctor. But something felt wrong. His instincts, honed by years of reading trouble, screamed caution. Then he saw them 3 horses tied in the cottonwoods about a quarter mile from the ferry landing, hidden from casual view but positioned to watch anyone approaching the crossing. Cole's gut tightened. He recognized one mount, a paint horse with distinctive markings he'd seen in tracks days ago. The gang had guessed they'd need to cross here, had set up to wait. He backed away carefully, returned to where Anna waited with the girls. Her face fell as she read his expression. He drew quickly in the dirt 3 stick figures, horses, the river. She understood immediately, gathered the girls closer. Cole thought fast. They couldn't go around. The girls needed medicine, needed rest in real beds. They couldn't wait. The gang out time favored the hunters. Not them. But maybe, just maybe, he could use misdirection instead of confrontation. He wrote quickly, "Hide in the wash. I'll draw them off. When clear, you cross." Anna shook her head violently, grabbed his arm. Her signs were emphatic: no, together, danger. But Cole had already decided. He wrote, "Trust me, keep girls safe. If something happens, go to Haven. Ask for Doc Morrison." Before she could protest more, he was moving, but not toward the ferry, not yet. First, he needed to change his appearance. He took off his trail coat, pulled out the black coat he'd saved from better days. From his saddlebag came something he'd almost thrown away a dozen times, a small leather-bound Bible, water-stained but intact, his mother's, carried for sentiment more than faith. He mussed his hair differently, adopted a slight stoop. When he looked at his reflection in a puddle, a different man looked back, older, softer, scholarly rather than dangerous. A traveling preacher, perhaps, the kind who drifted between frontier towns bringing the word to folks hungry for it. Cole approached the ferry openly, leading his horse, the Bible visible in his hand. He saw the moment the watchers noticed him a stirring in the cottonwoods, the glint of sun on metal, but he kept his pace steady, unthreatening, even humming an old hymn. The ferryman, ancient and weathered as river driftwood, looked up from mending rope. Crossing. "If the Lord wills it," Cole said, affecting a slight Eastern accent. "I'm bound for Haven. Heard they're in need of ministering. That'll be 4 bits, 6 with the horse." Cole was counting out coins when they came 3 men emerging from the trees, trying to look casual but moving with predatory purpose. The leader matched Anna's drawing, tall, thin, with a scar across his left cheek that pulled his mouth into a permanent sneer. The others flanked him, a thick-set man with dead eyes and a younger one wearing a Mexican-style hat decorated with silver conchos. "Afternoon, Reverend," Scar said, his voice deceptively pleasant. "You traveling alone?" "The Lord is always with me," Cole replied mildly, clutching the Bible. "But if you mean earthly companions, yes, I travel alone. The circuit-riding life doesn't suit those with families." The Mexican circled behind him, checking his horse, his gear, looking for signs of women and children. Cole knew, finding nothing but a traveling preacher's modest possessions. "Seen anyone else on the trail?" Deadeyes asked. "Woman with 2 girls. Maybe," Cole appeared to think, scratching his chin. "Now that you mention it, I did encounter such a party. Oh. 3 days passed, maybe 4. Poor woman seemed distressed. Her little ones were crying something fierce." The 3 men exchanged glances. Scar leaned closer. "Which way were they heading?" "East," Cole said without hesitation. "Toward Denver," she said, "looking for her late husband's family. I offered to pray with them, but she seemed in a powerful hurry. Is the woman in some kind of trouble?" "She stole from us." Scar lied smoothly. "Took something valuable? We just want to talk to her, settle things peaceful like." "How unfortunate," Cole said, shaking his head. "The good book tells us about the wages of sin, though it also speaks of forgiveness." He was about to launch into a sermon when a small voice pierced the air. "Papa!" Cole's heart stopped. Ruby had broken free from the wash, was running toward him, her fever-flushed face bright with relief. Behind her came Rosie, then Anna, unable to stop them without making noise to alert them. Everything changed in an instant. The 3 men's hands went to their guns. Cole stepped between them and his approaching family, and the word felt right now. His family keeping his body relaxed even as every muscle prepared for action. "Papa!" Ruby reached him, threw her arms around his leg. "Mama said wait, but we saw you and—" "Hush now, sweet one," Cole said gently, his hand settling on her head. He looked at the 3 men, saw calculation in their eyes. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the deception, but surely you can understand a man protecting his family." He kept his voice conversational, reasonable. "My wife here witnessed something unfortunate, but she's also deaf and simple-minded from a childhood fever. She couldn't testify to anything even if she wanted to." Anna had reached them now, playing the part without prompting. She signed frantically, not real words but random gestures that looked like the confused communication of someone whose mind didn't work quite right. She grabbed the girls, pulled them against her, her eyes vacant and frightened. Scar studied them, suspicion clear on his scarred face. She seemed smart enough to run, smart enough to hide. "Instinct," Cole said. Even animals run from danger. But look at her. Does she seem like a threat to anyone? The Mexican had circled around again, now stood between them and the river. Dead Eyes kept his hand on his gun. The tension stretched tight as wet leather in the sun. Then, from the Haven Road, came the sound of many horses. A lot of horses. The three men turned, and Cole saw their faces change as a dozen riders appeared, moving with purpose toward the ferry. The lead rider wore a badge, a proper town marshal's star, not some frontier deputy's tin. Behind him rode what looked like a proper posse, armed and ready. They'd been heading to the crossing anyway, Cole realized, but their timing was providence itself. "Afternoon, folks," the marshal called out, his eyes taking in the scene, the three armed men, the family clustered together, the positioning that suggested confrontation. "Everything peaceful here." "Just a misunderstanding, Marshal," Scar said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. The marshal dismounted, and Cole saw recognition dawn in his eyes as he looked at the three men. "You boys match some descriptions we've been hearing. Something about a stage robbery up north. Murder, too." "You got the wrong men," Deadeyes said, but his hand moved away from his gun as the posse spread out, surrounding them without seeming to. "Maybe," the marshal said agreeably. "Maybe not. Why don't you boys come with us to Haven? We can sort it all out there. Judge Whitmore's holding court this week." Scar looked at his companions, at the posse, at Cole and his family. Cole saw him calculating odds, chances, possibilities. Then the marshal added, almost casually, "Oh, and boys, that stage belonged to Wells Fargo. They've posted a reward, dead or alive. They prefer alive, but they ain't particular." The threat was clear. The three men could come peacefully or die here. Scar raised his hands slowly. "We'll come peaceful, Marshal. Like I said, it's all a misunderstanding." As the posse disarmed the three men, preparing to transport them, the marshal approached Cole. "You folks all right?" "We are now," Cole said. "My girls here are sick. We're trying to reach Haven and the doctor." The marshal studied Anna, who maintained her vacant expression. Then the girls, clearly feverish and weak. "Doc Morrison's a good man. He'll see them right." He lowered his voice. "That woman really simple." Cole met his eyes steadily. "She's exactly as smart as she needs to be. Marshal." Understanding passed between them. The marshal touched his hat brim. "Well then, you folks cross on over. We'll make sure these three don't cause you any more trouble." As the posse led the three men away, Scar shooting one last venomous look over his shoulder, Cole finally let himself breathe. Ruby was still clutching his leg. Rosie had her arms around her mother. They stood there, a small unit against the world. The ferrymen, who'd watched everything with the detached interest of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised, spat tobacco juice and said, "Still 6 bits to cross? Drama don't ride free." Cole paid him, and they loaded onto the ferry. As they poled across the swollen river, Anna finally dropped her act. She wrote on her notepad, simple-minded, "Saved us." Cole wrote back, "They can't fear what they pity." She studied him for a long moment, then wrote, "Papa, Ruby," reading over their shoulders, piped up, "He is Papa now. Isn't he? Mama." Anna looked at her daughters, at Cole, at the muddy river carrying them toward safety. She didn't write anything more, but she moved closer to him on the crowded ferry, her shoulder touching his. Answer enough. On the far bank. Haven was visible, a real town with a church steeple, smoke rising from chimneys, the promise of doctors and beds and safety. The danger wasn't fully past. The three men might escape, might have friends, might seek revenge, but for now, they were caught, and Cole's family was safe. As they led the horse off the ferry, Rosie spoke for the first time in hours. "Papa was brave," she said solemnly. "He stood between us and the bad men." Yes, Anna signed, though her eyes were on Cole. Very brave. But Cole didn't feel brave. He felt like a man who'd found something worth protecting and had done what was necessary to protect it. Not with violence, but with wit. With help from strangers who'd arrived at just the right moment. With a community's law standing between them and chaos. The road to Haven was clear before them. Behind. The marshal's posse was taking the would-be killers to face justice. And somewhere between the terror of discovery and the relief of rescue, they'd crossed another kind of river from pretending to be a family to simply being one. Dr. Morrison's house stood on Haven's main street, a neat white building with a shingle that promised medical treatment and medicines. As they approached, Cole carrying Ruby while Anna supported Rosie, he felt the last of the immediate danger drain away. They'd made it. The girls would get proper care. The gang was caught, and somehow, in protecting these three, he'd found his way back to something he'd thought lost forever: the courage to care, the strength to stay, and the wisdom to know that family isn't always about blood, but about the choice to stand between danger and those who call you Papa, even when you never expected to hear that name again. The doctor's door opened before they could knock. A kindly-faced woman appeared, took one look at the sick girls, and ushered them inside without questions. "Doctor," she called, "we have children need tending." As they crossed the threshold into warmth and safety, Ruby reached up from Cole's arms and patted his cheek. "Papa saved us," she whispered. "Mama said he would." Cole looked at Anna, who was watching him with those expressive eyes. She signed something he'd learned over their journey home. Not this place. He understood. Not Haven. Though it offered Haven. Home was the four of them. Together, whatever came next. Home was choosing to stop running and start building. Home was a deaf woman and two little girls who'd somehow made a drifter remember he had a heart worth risking. Judge Whitmore was not what Cole expected. Instead of the stern, formal man he'd imagined, the judge turned out to be a small, energetic fellow with twinkling eyes and ink-stained fingers. He received them in his office above the general store. Books piled everywhere. A cat sleeping on legal papers. "So," the judge said, settling behind his cluttered desk while Cole and Anna sat across from him, the girls playing quietly with the wooden doll on a rug nearby. "Marshal Henley told me about the incident at the crossing. Those three men are locked up tight, awaiting transport to federal custody. But that leaves us with a problem." Cole tensed, but the judge raised a calming hand. "Not that kind of problem. See, they're talking. Claiming the woman," he nodded to Anna, "is a material witness to murder. If they go to trial, and they will, there'll be lawyers who'll want her testimony." Anna had been reading the judge's lips with intense concentration. She wrote on her pad, "I cannot speak to testify." "I know that, dear," the judge said gently. "But a smart lawyer might argue you could write your testimony, or sign it. They might demand you appear. Drag this out for months, maybe years. Unless—" He paused, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "There's an old principle in law. A wife cannot be compelled to testify against her husband, nor a husband against his wife. If you were married to Mr. Drifter here, and if he claimed to be present during the alleged witnessing, well, spousal privilege would protect you both from being forced to testify." The room went very quiet. Even the girls stopped playing, sensing the weight of the moment. Cole could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. Marriage. Not for love, though, that was growing between them like a seed in good soil, but for protection. For legal safety. Anna wrote carefully, "A marriage of convenience." "That's between you folks," the judge said. "I just performed the ceremony. What it means, what it becomes, that's your business. But I'll tell you true. I've seen marriages that started with less end up being the truest unions I know." Cole found his voice. "We'd need time to discuss." "Of course," the judge said. "But those men will be transported day after tomorrow. Once they're in federal hands, different rules apply. The protection would need to be in place before then." He stood, his cat stretching and yawning. "Think on it. If you decide yes, come see me tomorrow. We'll make it proper and legal." They left the judge's office in silence, the weight of the suggestion hanging between them. Dr. Morrison had given the girls a clean bill of health that morning, their fevers broken, strength returning. He'd also mentioned a homestead just outside town, abandoned when the previous owner returned east, available for claiming. That evening, in their room at the boarding house, after the girls were asleep, Cole and Anna sat by the window, looking out at Haven's quiet main street. She wrote, "Is this what you want? I want you safe." He wrote back, "All of you. That's not what I asked." Cole set down the pencil, took her hands in his. They'd developed so many ways to communicate: signs, touches, looks, but this needed words she could see. He wrote slowly, 5 years ago, I lost everything. Stopped believing in tomorrow. Then I found 2 girls behind burned wagons. Found you. Found myself again. I don't know if that's love, but it's something worth protecting." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She freed one hand, touched his face, then wrote, "James was my first love. Young love. You're different. Choice love. Deliberate. Maybe stronger. The girls." Cole started to write, but Anna stopped him. She pointed to where Ruby and Rosie slept, then signed what he'd learned meant already decided. And it was true. The girls had been calling him Papa since the river crossing, had accepted this new configuration of family without question. Anna wrote one more thing. Tomorrow, then. Tomorrow. The next morning dawned clear and bright. The boarding house owner, Mrs. Patterson, somehow knew about the impending ceremony. Small towns had no secrets, and appeared with an armload of cloth. "Was my daughter's," she said gruffly. "She's married and moved to California now. No point in it gathering dust." It was a dress, simple but pretty, blue as a summer sky. For the girls, she'd brought hair ribbons and clean pinafores. Other donations appeared throughout the morning. The blacksmith's wife brought a ring, my first husband's, God rest him. Been saving it for someone who needed it. The general store owner offered credit. New families need supplies to start. The preacher's wife appeared with a bouquet of wildflowers and 2 small crowns woven from daisies and prairie roses. By afternoon, it seemed the whole town knew. When Cole and Anna walked to the chapel, the girls ahead of them scattering flower petals from a basket someone had provided. Folks lined the street, smiling and waving. The chapel was small, whitewashed, filled with light from tall windows. Judge Whitmore stood at the front in his formal robes, looking more official than he had in his cluttered office. The preacher stood beside him. The judge would handle the legal aspects, but Reverend Mills insisted on giving a blessing. "Dearly beloved," the judge began, then paused. "Well, that's the traditional opening, but nothing about this is traditional, is it?" He smiled at the small gathering. "We're here to witness something rare, 2 people choosing to bind their lives together, not from passion's blindness, but from clear-eyed decision." He turned to Anna. "Now, I understand you communicate through sign language. Mr. Drifter will speak his vows aloud, and you will sign yours. I've arranged for Mrs. Chen." He nodded to the Chinese laundry owner's wife, who knew sign language from her deaf son, to translate for the witnesses. Cole hadn't prepared formal vows, but standing there, looking at Anna in her borrowed blue dress, the girls beside her holding their wildflower crowns, words came. "Anna," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I promise to protect you and the girls with everything I have, to provide for you, to stand beside you, to learn your language so we're never truly silent to each other, to be a father to Ruby and Rosie, and a partner to you in all things, to choose you, every day, as you've chosen me." Anna's hands moved gracefully, Mrs. Chen translating in a soft voice. "Cole, you gave us safety when we were lost. You showed my daughters what a father's love looks like. I promise to stand with you, to build a home with you, to teach you my silence and learn your sounds, to trust you with our hearts." as you've trusted us with yours." Then, unexpectedly, Anna spoke, not in signs but in words, carefully formed despite years of silence. "I love you." Cole's vision blurred. He spoke the same words back, adding the signs she'd taught him. The girls cheered, the small congregation murmured approval, and Judge Whitmore declared them married in the eyes of law and God. The celebration was small, but joyful. The boarding house served a wedding dinner, nothing fancy, but the whole town seemed to contribute something. A pie here, preserves there, fresh bread, pickled vegetables. Musicians appeared with fiddle and guitar, playing though Anna could only feel the vibrations through the floor. But she danced anyway, Cole leading her carefully, the girls spinning around them like small satellites. At one point, Ruby signed something to her mother that made Anna laugh, that silent laugh Cole had grown to love and pull him closer. "What did she say?" he wrote on a napkin. "She says you dance like a bear. A nice bear." As evening came, the blacksmith appeared with a wagon. "Thought you folks might want to see that homestead. Previous owner left it furnished. Just needs some cleaning and care." The whole town seemed to form a parade out to the property 3 miles from Haven, situated on good land with water rights and a view of the mountains. The cabin was small but solid, with a main room, a separate bedroom, and a loft where the girls could sleep. A cast iron stove dominated one corner, and someone had already laid a fire. The townspeople had been busy. The place was clean, the bed made with fresh linens. Preserving jars lined the shelves filled with goods: tomatoes, peaches, pickled beans. Seed packets sat on the table with a note, "For spring planting, welcome home." As the sun set and the townspeople departed with good wishes, the 4 of them stood in their new home. Cole lit the kerosene lamp, its warm glow filling the space. Anna unpacked their few belongings, so little to start a life with, but somehow enough. The girls explored everything, delighted with the loft space, the view from the window, the rag rug soft under their bare feet. They signed rapidly to their mother about where their bed would go, where they'd keep their treasures, how they'd help with the garden come spring. After a simple supper, Mrs. Patterson had left a pot of stew warming on the stove. They sat together in the main room. Cole pulled out his harmonica, playing soft melodies while Anna taught the girls new signs. She showed them how to sign family, all fingers of one hand coming together, united. "We're a family now," Ruby announced, practicing the sign. "A real proper family." "We're before, too," Rosie said, wise beyond her years. "But now it's official." As the girls grew tired, Anna took them up to the loft, helping them settle into their new bed. Cole could hear her moving about up there, the soft sounds of maternal care tucking blankets. Whispered good nights and signs the girls could feel against their skin, the eternal rhythms of motherhood. When she came back down, she found Cole standing by the window, looking out at the stars. She touched his arm, and he turned to find her holding the slate, but she didn't write. Instead, she signed slowly, making sure he understood. No regrets. "None," he signed back, proud that he knew enough now to respond. They prepared for bed quietly, the strange intimacy of new marriage making them both shy. But when Anna sat on the edge of the bed to brush out her hair, that dark river he'd admired for days, Cole found himself moving to help. She stilled, then relaxed, letting him work through the tangles gently. When he finished, she turned, took his face in her hands, and kissed him. Not passionate, but promising. A seal on their bargain. A beginning of something neither had expected to find again. Later, lying in the dark with Anna asleep beside him, her hand resting on his chest, Cole listened to the night sounds of their new home, the girls stirring in the loft, the wind through the cottonwoods outside, the settling of wood and stone. From somewhere far off came the call of an owl, answered by another. Not lonely sounds, but companionable ones. Creatures marking their territory, their place in the world. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, from burned wagons to this cabin, from solitary drifting to sudden fatherhood, from silence to understanding. Tomorrow would bring challenges. The land would need working. The cabin needed repairs before winter. The girls would need schooling. There would be legal papers to file, making the adoption official, claiming the homestead properly. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight. 4 shadows moved on the cabin wall as the lamp flickered, Anna turning in her sleep. The girls shifting in the loft, Cole reaching to adjust the blanket. 4 shadows that merged and separated and merged again, no longer distinct entities but parts of a whole. He remembered Ruby's words at the river, "Papa saved us." But she was wrong. They had saved each other. Anna had saved him from the emptiness of endless drifting. The girls had saved him from forgetting how to be gentle. And maybe he'd given them something too: safety, stability, a future different from the one fear had promised. The lamp burned low, casting longer shadows. Cole carefully got up to bank the fire in the stove, making sure it would hold till morning. As he moved through the dark cabin, he realized he knew already where everything was: the water bucket, the wood box, the girls' shoes lined up neat by the door. This was home now, not just shelter. When he returned to bed, Anna stirred, signed something in her sleep. He couldn't make it out in the darkness, but her hand found his, fingers interlacing, a simple touch that said everything: we're here. We're together. We're home. Outside. The prairie wind sang through the grass, and somewhere a coyote called to the moon. But it wasn't a lonely sound anymore. It was just another voice in the night, another creature that had found its place. As Cole had finally found his, not at the end of a trail, but at the beginning of something new, built from the ashes of what was lost and the hope of what could be. The last thing he saw before sleep took him was the way the moonlight caught on the simple gold ring on his finger, and beside it, Anna's hand wearing its match. 2 rings that had belonged to others, had witnessed other loves and losses, now repurposed for this unexpected union. Like everything else about them, salvaged, rebuilt, made new. Tomorrow the sun would rise on their first full day as a legal family. There would be work and worry, joy and struggle. But tonight, in this cabin on the prairie, 4 people who had been alone in different ways were alone no longer. They were home. They were family. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Cole Drifter began this journey as a man running from connection, a soul convinced that caring meant losing. The burned way station should have been just another tragedy to ride past. Those 2 soot-covered girls, holding each other in desperate silence, represented everything he'd sworn to avoid: vulnerability, responsibility, the terrible risk of love. Yet sometimes life's greatest gifts arrive disguised as burdens. Anna's arrival, desperate and hunted, could have sent him running. Instead, their shared commitment to the children became the foundation for something neither expected. Not a family born from planning or passion, but one forged through choice: the daily decision to stay, to protect, to trust. The girls called him Papa not because of blood, but because of presence. Anna chose him not for grand gestures, but for small kindnesses: mending tiny dresses, carving wooden dolls, standing between danger and innocence. Their gratitude wasn't spoken but lived, shown in trust freely given and hearts slowly opened. This is family's deepest truth. It's less about where you come from than where you choose to stand. Sometimes the greatest injustice: abandoned children. A hunted mother becomes the doorway to unexpected grace. Have you ever found yourself faced with someone else's desperate need, knowing help would cost you, but unable to walk away?